Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I see Donna, who's been attending some of our series here. My name is Pitzel Krotova, and I am the Director of Institutional Assessment here at Murray State University. Welcome to the first Institutional Assessment Learning Series organized by our Office of the Institutional Effectiveness. So the aim of this learning series is to share peer-led best practices in outcomes assessment. So the presentations from this series are meant to offer practical insights and inspiration for our fellow assessment coordinators, faculty, as well as staff. This is the fourth presentation in the first learning series, and I'm delighted to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Rebecca Williams. Dr. Williams is an associate professor of art education in the College of Humanities and Fine Arts and currently serves as the chair of the art and design department. In addition to that, in addition to her leadership role, she also is managing and coordinating the assessment activities across all programs within the art and design department. Recently, her department undertook a comprehensive revision of their program goals and learning outcomes. So today, she will share some insights into their internal assessment processes and some rationale behind their design choices. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Williams.
Hey, everybody. I thought that sharing about our assessment plan might be really helpful because we have a program where some might stop and think, how would you meaningfully assess what's happening there? How is that possible in a field like art or design? And so our goals for today is for you to see how we've structured our approach to an assessment plan that's going to be meaningful within our discipline, some strategies that we use to actually implement the plan throughout the academic year, and then ways that we are trying to integrate faculty engagement in analyzing the data and driving curriculum improvement. So we're going to jump in with how we have this structured approach to crafting our assessment plan based on our program learning outcomes. So as Pitzel was saying, we recently completely redid our PLOs for our program, and it coincided with the end of a 3-year cycle. So this was really ideal for us. And what we then had to do was to decide how we wanted to evaluate our PLOs across this upcoming 3-year cycle. It would have been far too burdensome for us to evaluate all 6 of our objectives every year. So with this driving question, we decided to group our PLOs thematically. So we only evaluate 2 PLOs each year of the 3-year cycle. Here you can see in academic year 1, we're going to focus on craftsmanship, use of materials, along with integration of the elements and principles of design in students' art. Those go hand in hand. They can be evaluated in students' artwork in specific classes or in their portfolio across the program. In academic year 2, we're really excited because we've actually never had a PLO specifically about art history content knowledge. So we're bringing that in for academic year 2, our new PLO 2. We are also going to pair it with students being able to analyze the form, content, and context of artworks. They could do this verbally or in writing, and it pairs well with assessing art history because there's writing about art in those classes. It can be assessed in studio classes too, because our students do things like write artist statements or write or create presentations about other artists. In academic year 3, we're going to cover our last 2 PLOs, and this is really going to focus on students' portfolio development over time. We're going to look at how their concept development has increased, and we're going to evaluate, do they have a professional portfolio that's ready for their next step in their careers? So after deciding to group our PLOs thematically, we then selected a course rotation for that 3-year cycle to make sure as we're assessing our different PLOs, we're also getting this full coverage of our curriculum. So all of our PLOs are assessed for student growth in our foundations courses. These are the courses that all freshmen have to take upon entry. Then we also assess every single one at what we call mid-degree review and senior exhibition. So our foundations assessment makes sure that we're evaluating student growth in that entry level, right as they enter art and design. For mid-degree review, this is a course where students present their body of work that they've developed in foundations courses and our intermediate studio courses. So it's like the first half of their art degree. We see a portfolio of their work. It's a snapshot at a moment in time about end of sophomore year. And then their senior exhibition is in their very last semester when they present a final body of work designed around a concept and within an area of emphasis. So maybe they're a painter, maybe they're a printmaker, maybe they're a graphic designer. And so their work relates to that emphasis. So we are able to evaluate achievement of our PLOs at the entry, the middle, and the exit of our program with this approach. So you can see in the slides, right? We've identified which foundations courses we're going to assess in the first academic year of that cycle. And they changed to the art history foundation courses in the second year. And we go back to them, the same studio courses in the third year, but to kind of balance the load from having a heavy fall that first year, we move 113 to the spring to evaluate that course there. Consistent across all, though, we evaluate mid-degree review and senior exhibition each academic year on the different PLOs. So with this rotation, we found that we're able to keep our assessment workload manageable since we're not trying to do everything all at once. It spreads our assessment expectations across faculty. So like the people teaching in our foundations program aren't being asked every semester, every year to report data on their classes. And it provides a broad view of student learning across our entire program. Our next step was identifying which formative and summative assessments we would use to evaluate each PLO. And I've got some driving questions that you could use with your teams to help facilitate this process. Here's how we approached it. As a department, we've decided to utilize course embedded assessments. We're already doing assessments in our classes, so why reinvent the wheel? So, for each foundations course being assessed during the academic year, we went ahead and selected a formative and a summative assessment for each PLO. These assessments were selected in conjunction with the faculty who teach those courses to make sure they were choosing assignments that were relevant to the PLO and they understood what we were wanting to do. So we gave them a general description of the type of formative assessment we wanted, a specific assignment, skill builder or early course assignment related to craftsmanship and technique and use in materials. So in drawing one, they decided it would be a site measuring still life drawing done in the first half of the semester. For the summative, we told them we wanted this to be a final assignment focused on craftsmanship and technique. So they chose the final drawing assignment in drawing one for that one. And you can see each of our different classes, the professors worked together, if multiple people taught the same class, to choose the formative and summative assessment that was common across all sections that they wanted to evaluate. Another approach, which you can see here, is that mid-degree review serves as our formative assessment of the PLO at the midpoint of students' degree, and their senior exhibition serves as the summative assessment. So instead of having an early assessment and mid-degree review as the formative and a final as the summative, mid-degree review, that whole course, their final portfolio in there is the formative, midpoint in their degree, and their senior exhibition is the summative, end of their degree. So there are two ways we're going about it, even within the same academic year. Since we grouped our PLOs thematically for the year, we are able to assess both PLOs for the year in the same formative and summative assessments. So you'll see right in drawing for PLO 1B about the elements and principles, they're going to use that same site measuring still life drawing and final assignment for their formative and summative. Using the same assignment really decreases the workload for faculty rather than naming a whole new one for the second PLO. Now that we had named each of our assessments that we were going to use, it was time to design a PLO rubric. We wanted to use a rubric to help us have clear criteria for evaluating PLO achievement. We also wanted the rubric to be able to be used at different points in students' degrees. So we chose to use it to improve inter-rater reliability because a rubric allows you to describe each benchmark carefully. What does the performance level look like if a student gets rated at satisfactory or limited for each of the specific PLOs we have here? And one thing that we clarify for faculty is that when using the rubric, they're evaluating students' PLO achievement based on the course that they are in, not based on being a graduate of the program. So we're evaluating their success at that level in that course. So we spent a lot of time really like working with this language to make sure we all agreed on what it meant and are able to use it to evaluate portfolios. Then we had to determine success criteria. What was going to be our target score for formative and summative success in our different courses? And so we presented, when we present our results, we do it as an aggregate score for the PLO. Generally, we expect students are going to score lower on that formative assessment since it's happening earlier in their course or maybe earlier in their program if we're thinking about mid-degree review, and then higher on their summative, so later in that course or later in that program. So we use different criteria for formative and summative. Formative, our aim is that 70% of our students will score satisfactory, which is 3 or higher on the rubric, and summative, we bump that up to 80. Then it's that exciting part where you need to start collecting those assessment results. And we wanted to make it as simple as possible. Since it's that aggregate score, the only thing that our instructors have to give us is their sample size, how many students are in your class, and the number of students that met the goal of 3 or higher. So this is how instructors can see what is it that we're evaluating. Everything they need is in this one table. They've got what is their formative assessment, what is the criteria we're aiming for, same with the summative, and then we embed the rubric that they are evaluating with right above it so that they can evaluate that chosen work with the rubric. And then here is the second page, right? Because in year one, we were doing PLO 1A and PLO 1B. It's assessed on the same assignment because we're looking at drawing one. But this year, we also assessed 111 and 113. So each course has their own little table like this where they're going to put in their results. Now, coordinating assessment across the department is a big feat. And so we really wanted to find some sustainable strategies for implementing that assessment plan throughout the academic year. We wanted to make it much more manageable. We needed to know who was doing what. We needed to have a timeline to set us up for success. So I was going to share our timeline with you. We actually chose and set yearly dates for each step of this process, and we have them on our departmental calendar as annual. And so they show up to trigger our memory of what it is, what step we need to be doing for our assessment plan at that time. Now, one big thing I think is identifying who is responsible for completing each step. In our department, the way that we are currently running it is that the chair chair of the department, or chair of the assessment committee. I just so happen to be both. Since I'm an art educator, I have more experience with assessment. So the chair leads what is happening, but everyone participates in implementation and analysis. So on August 1st, we have our chair make sure the previous academic year's data is in SPOL. It should already be there. This is a double check to make sure we didn't miss anything. They then conduct a review of the findings. This initial review is meant to draft some preliminary recommendations. I can have some good ideas for what might happen, but my ideas are not necessarily coming from the instructor of that course. If it were our digital foundations class, I don't teach that class. I might have some suggestions for them, but the professors of that class may have some better ideas than I do. So that's why I'm calling it preliminary recommendations. I also draft our current academic year assessment plan. Since we projected what all are we going to be assessing each of our 3 years of the cycle, what classes will we be assessing in there? It's easy for me to go ahead and plug in what should we be focusing on for this academic year. Then on the last Friday in August, really early in the semester, our assessment committee meets. At that meeting, we try to really finalize some things to bring before the whole faculty. They review the findings along with my initial analysis of them, see if they're seeing the same things as me or if they have other insight into that data. Then we draft recommendations. My preliminary ones give us a place to jump off and oftentimes really good things to debate and push and pull on until we can find something that works with all the faculty on that assessment committee. We try to have faculty on our committee that represent the different areas in our program. And so I think that makes these conversations really beneficial. And then we work together to finalize the current academic year assessment plan. It is challenging because you're wrapping up the previous year and creating the next year, but this juggle, they kind of go hand in hand because what happened in the previous year impacts what you're doing in the current year. On the first Friday of December, we have a departmental assessment meeting. It's just like any other department meeting, except we're focused on data analysis for that one. They review the findings reported from the assessment committee and they refine our recommendations. They have to agree to doing it. So if they don't like what we came up with, then we workshop the write-up in the meeting together right then and there. And we loop them in on the plan for the current academic year and ensure that the selected assessments are going to work across the sections. On the second Monday of September, our chair sends out that academic year PLO data needs for fall courses. So each instructor gets an email with what it is we need them to collect really early in the semester so they can be planning for it. On September 15th, or by September 15th, our chair submits the assessment report for the previous academic year. It's been finalized through these different meetings. And by October 1st, the chair submits the assessment plan for the current academic year. For us, having one person doing this works really well because I'm trained on using SPOL and I know how to work within the system. So we build everything out together and I copy and paste in. During finals week of the fall, the chair enters the data into SPOL. Also, you reach out to those faculty who haven't sent in the data yet if it's missing, because it should have already been generated. On the second Monday of February, I send out that academic year PLO request for the spring semester to each instructor. And then during finals week of spring, I enter that data into SPOL. So this is how we make sure all the steps are going to happen throughout the year. One thing that we have found is that organization is really key to implementation because a lot of people are involved in this process. So what we do is we make one Google Doc that houses the academic year's assessment plan. Here you can see page 1 of the doc. It's got hyperlinks to each of the courses being assessed that year, so they don't have to scroll through all the pages in the document to find their course. We explain our criteria for formative and summative assessments and what success looks like at the foundations level and across the program, since those are the two different ways we're evaluating it. Here we can see page 2, which is the first page for the drawing course. It's what I was showing you in the slideshow, right? These are filled in because they were this fall. Faculty went in and put these scores in for their sample size and the number that met it for each section. So we've got the formative assessment and the summative assessment. And then it keeps going, right? Because we had PLO 1A and they also have 1B for that course. And so they're tied together in the same table, and they start entering the formative and the summative for 1B. Now, below that is Art 111. Notice, right, it's got a bookmark because it's hyperlinked, so instructors can pop down to the course they teach and they can enter that data for the courses they teach. It keeps going, and there are pages right now that have the sample size and the number met blank because it's for the spring semester and we haven't entered those just yet. Now, I mentioned that I regularly or on specific days of the semester send out my emails requesting PLO data collection. And I thought it might be nice to show you what those emails look like. Because what we did is we made a data request template where we can paste in the specific things we need from specific groups of instructors. So you can see the subject line. It's nice to have what the academic year is, what the PLOs are, and what course it is for easy searching within your email. If you need to get back to it, or if your faculty need to pull it back up, what PLOs were I supposed to be assessing? So we address who it's to, so Art 101 instructors. We identify the formative and summative assessment that they've agreed to evaluate, and we paste in the rubric so they have it at their fingertips. Then we go on to say that all they have to report is the total number of students assessed, or the sample size, and the number of students who score satisfactory 3 or higher on both assessments in each section of Art 101 in this doc. And I link to that master document so that they can go and input that data themselves for me to then put in SPOL. And that's what they get from me. About halfway through the semester and towards the end of the semester, I reply to that email chain and check in if they haven't already sent me their data. And they've been really good about staying on top of this, or replying to my requests when they come through, if they haven't gotten it done just yet. Now, a big step for us as a department is that last academic year was the first time our entire faculty was engaged in data analysis and using it to drive curricular improvement. So this was a brand new thing for us. This began with me reviewing the academic year findings, drafting some preliminary recommendations. I really found it was helpful to come with something for the assessment committee to dig their teeth into. It wasn't the end all be all. I told them, I want to know what you see in this data. What have I missed? What more does it tell us? And I wanted their expertise on how should we work on this, and is it worthy of being worked on if we need some improvement. Then that assessment committee's feedback was brought to our entire faculty in that departmental meeting. And my faculty were really vocal during this process, and they tweaked the ideas that we brought to them based on the consensus of the group. And we had that Google Doc open and edited it as we were talking. So we called that assessment departmental meeting in our second departmental meeting of the year on the first Friday of September. That timeline is really helpful. So we fit it in, and it works with all of the assessment deadlines. When we met with them, we presented the data anonymously. We kind of just replaced it with instructor 1 or adjunct 2. So no one felt singled out in the talk. And another thing we did is we took the table that they put their data in. We actually did file make a copy of the Google Doc, and we added more info. we use the analysis generated within SPOL to give that additional info. So what percent is meeting our goal for each section? What was our target? What was the actual percentage and the difference? Within that Google Doc, we added some extra rows. We presented our findings. This was really helpful for us to narrate out what we saw happening in the data, and it helped us talk to faculty about the numbers on this slide. So faculty could have the assessment report open and see the written description, but the numbers were on the slide and we described those findings for them. So some things that we noted is in this PLO, everyone did really strong overall. For instructor 2, they were slightly above the target, but below the overall average in the class. So here you can see their score is just a little bit lower than everyone else. And on that summative assessment, everybody was meeting their goal. Instructor number 2 met their goal and were comfortably above the target. And so after findings, right, what do we see? We moved on to talking about, well, what does this mean? That's what analysis of results is all about. So in the drawing course, craftsmanship and use of the elements and principles is happening. Our students were surpassing our set targets. But one thing we notice is that it was happening successfully in all of our courses, both formatively and summatively. Then we moved on to use of results. This was where faculty got more engaged, right? They saw what we were presenting from the data, and then we had to agree on what were we going to do with this information. We think the data was showing that our instructional strategies and our rubric criteria were effective, both for helping students achieve that PLO and evaluating the PLO. But because of that variation in instructors, specifically adjunct 2, that we saw scored was a little less successful, we felt it would be best if all of the instructors worked to share best practices. So our drawing instructors met in June and worked on creating a common syllabus for their class and agreeing upon what specific strategies and techniques they were going to teach in the class to better align that course across the different sections. And another thing is that our faculty agreed they wanted to have some regular discussions during the fall about how they were fostering high levels of craftsmanship. So in the midst of teaching, what are you finding really successful? And we really needed to identify who was going to lead this, and that was the professor or the instructor of drawing. So, a really big takeaway when we were preparing for that faculty share out was identifying our goals and our achievements, but then noting inconsistencies. We wanted to also start by providing some reasonable suggestions for what we might do to improve based on the data we were seeing. So, for instance, with PLO 5, we noticed that there was a pretty big difference in the rating of instructors. 2 instructors scored, there was like a 10-point spread between their scores. So some scored maybe harder or easier, or some had students who were stronger and students who were weaker. Let's say like maybe all the really strong students chose the 8 a.m. class, right? And maybe that was why there was higher scores in that class. We don't know yet. So we came with some ideas for what we wanted to do to address that variation. One was for the instructors to have discussions about their sections. What are you noticing? Is it that the 8 a.m. class? Is it that the 8 a.m. class is the more conscientious student, or is something else going on there? Another thing that we were thinking is that they could have a session where they reviewed portfolios of this work together and talked about, well, what would we rate it on the rubric? In the meeting, the faculty didn't think they were at that point. They really felt there were some core differences in the students in their classes that semester. So we changed our plan and we decided that after these discussions this year, we're going to assess the data again. If that pattern continues, then we will have a calibration session for their rubric grading. And if it's not, then, their intuition about what was going on that year was likely right. So, responding to faculty feedback is really important if you want to have that buy-in in the process. So just one more example here for PLO6, we didn't meet our goal for this one. We had a section that scored lower. Both scored a little lower than we were aiming for, and one scored quite a bit lower. We had a lot of discussion about varying factors that could have impacted this, and then what were reasonable expectations. Since this one was assessing our mid-degree review and senior exhibitions, we agreed we really do want a calibration session because we evaluate these in teams. How can we make sure each team is evaluating it consistently? And so we came up with a plan to do 2 calibration sessions. One where we just looked at a sample body of work from students and evaluated it together, the whole team, with the rubric. It was really eye-opening. It revealed some people having different expectations for what students' portfolio might look like at the midpoint of their degree. And we were able to hash some of that out. The second session, though, was going to be listening to an audio recording of a student talking about their body of work, because that's a very different element of the rubric, their verbal presentation. We are actually doing that today at 12:30. So we're going to be finishing up that alignment with our rubric by addressing the final element of that project. So with that said, I want to give us some time for questions that you might have that I can help with or others on the call can jump in about.
I don't really have a question, but Rebecca, I think it's pretty awesome, like how it's not just your response, like you've shared the responsibility, so it's everybody owns the data. Because sometimes I feel like sometimes when we're given the role of like the assessment person, it's like, oh, that's what you do. But it's really all of us taking ownership and then making it meaningful. Like I really appreciate that it's meaningful connection into what they're already doing so they can see it as that next step. So I think that's pretty awesome. I appreciate that.
Thanks. And it chairing the committee or being the chair in our department, whichever role of mine makes me be the one that enters it. I do think it is a heavy load of service to prepare it and to enter it into SPOL. But that part, I can't see a way around having one single person to do it for consistency's sake. But maybe, once we have done this a few cycles, I can come off as being chair of that committee and someone else can take a turn at that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is one of the main reasons why I invited you to present this kind of learning series, because it really captures like a whole new kind of structure wherein something isn't working in the past and we need to really do something to change it. And your leadership in this is really I really appreciate it. And whenever you have some questions, you always ask our office and seek for our help. And that's our job here to guide you and provide you some assistance. If you have some other questions, Abby, Donna, even Garmondu, if you find something that you can ask Rebecca.
One thing that I would say is don't ever be afraid to reach out to the assessment office. They are so very helpful with technicalities, tricky things in SPOL. I know that they've gotten lots of emails from me, but it's empowered us to then be able to do something valuable for our department rather than just checking a box. So it's been a good process for us.
That's right. All right, if we don't have any,
Um,
yeah, go ahead, Garmondu.
thank you so much, Rebecca. That's I really enjoyed listening. Uh, just just so I have some clarity, what you do with formative and summative, in terms of setting your criteria on that? Do you have a single criteria that you submit, or I know what you already do, but just for other people, do you have a single criteria in terms of for each PLO, or how do you work around that? Because when you present it, it seems to be it looks more separate for a single course. Um, so I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to ask, but yeah.
So, what we have done is we've identified what score we want students to achieve. But so for the formative, 70% of them are going to reach satisfactory, right? Adequately meeting this objective halfway through their course. But at the end, we want at least 80% of students to be reaching satisfactory. If you go and look at our rubric, right, it's set up to describe what would achievement of this PLO look like? And so we use the same rubric at the formative assessment and the summative assessment. So it's not new to the instructor's expectations or to the goals of the students. We just are assuming more students will reach these levels in the summative assessment than the formative. So we've kind of simplified the process by using that same assessment tool.
Yeah, and the good thing is using the same rubric, because it kind of helps with reliability as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to point out, if the target was not met, it doesn't really reflect the how the faculty taught the course and all that. It's just there are many factors. That's the main reason why we analyze the data, we discuss it with our peers and all that. So yeah, these are great points, Rebecca. Thank you so much. So if we don't have any other questions, thank you all for your time today. We hope you find this session very relevant and informative and beneficial. And we look forward to seeing you at our next session. Bye, guys.
Thanks for hosting.